3 days later. Chapter 1. Nantucket County Jail, Nantucket, Massachusetts. My latest deployment in Iraq had ended in a blazing firefight. Team Rhino and I had fought our way out of an ambush south of Baghdad, and Al-Qaeda had put a bounty on my head for greasing one of their suicide bombers. Now I was standing in the middle of a holding cell on the tiny island of Nantucket in Massachusetts. I had made it back to the island via the last ferry, parked my car, and grabbed my gear. It's good to be home, I thought as I walked to my house. Actually, I hadn't exactly walked to my house. It was more like I sneaked in. And to be clear, the gear I'd grabbed was a Sig Sauer pistol, a Colt 45, an AR-15, and an HK MP5 submachine gun with all the fixings. I get why that might have seemed suspicious. Moments later, I was laid out on my kitchen floor, forcibly arrested by the 7 legitimately deputized agents of the federal government who'd been waiting inside. My overseas heroics didn't seem to matter much to the guys who'd thrown me in jail last night. I've been shot at on many occasions and made it out without a scratch. But this was my first time in jail. Not exactly Rikers or Sing Sing, I know. Not much violent crime on this island since Nantucket's days as the whaling capital of the world, but a pain in the ass all the same. So here I was, my pesky ego starting to hurt as much as the ass-kicking I'd gotten from the feds earlier. I could see the local boys in blue and the other agents glancing over their shoulders at me in the cage. Fuck them. I just stared back. I didn't hide my contempt. I shook my head, gathered my thoughts, and took stock of my surroundings, though I sure as shit wasn't planning on staying here long. I had a cellmate. He was about 18, 20 max, and not going to pose much of a threat. As soon as we made eye contact, he shifted nervously and looked at the floor. It must have been his first time in jail, too. "Nice watch," I said. Thanks," he replied, nervously trying to pull the sleeve of his sweater down over the glistening silver band. He was a tall, good-looking kid, with a lanky runner's body that stretched to just over 6 feet. The few days of summer growth on his face didn't amount to much. He was dressed like a typical summer resident. Shorts, sandals, an old fishing sweater, and a $6,000 Rolex, the Submariner with the green bezel. I had an old stainless Submariner, which had cost me a little over $3,000 about 15 years ago. No way this kid had spent a dime of hard-earned cash on his watch. Doubtful he'd ever worked hard enough even to get a blister. "Is that the 50th anniversary model?" I asked. He seemed resistant to my line of questioning about the Rolex, so I figured I'd go in a different direction to boost his ego just a tad. "So, what are you in for?" "I wrecked a car," he said curtly. Then, echoing my emphasis, "What did you do?" "Touché, asshole." "Well, I got into a fight with a state trooper, or maybe a local cop, not quite sure. Apparently, because of those love taps, I got flagged as a threat to someone important. A senator, I think. Some asshole who's staying in the house next to mine. What are the odds?" I shrugged my shoulders and raised an eyebrow. "Senator Harrison?" The kid was pretty astute. "Yeah, that sounds right. You know him?" "He and his wife have a house up here," he said sullenly. Switching gears, I asked, "The wreck, anyone get hurt?" "No," he sighed. "And I didn't really wreck it either." He placed his head between his hands, rubbed his temples, and breathed deeply, as if deliberating how much he wanted to share with me. "Well, what's the issue then?" He lifted his head from his hands and stammered. "Okay, Jesus, all right. I took my mom's car out for a ride with some friends." "Then what happened?" "We went to Nantucket to see some girls. We had a few beers and then drove out on the beach. I got it stuck in the sand and the tide came in."